The invocation will be provided by Tenova Chaplain Stephen Ferreira. Pledge of Allegiance will be provided by Commissioner Tim Mason. Please stand.
Thank you very much for inviting me here this morning, and all the chaplains and ministers that come to pray before you. It's important that we put God first in all things that we do. I want to read from Psalm 1, but I'm going to use a different translation. It's called the Passion Bible, because I really believe it kind of paraphrases what's on my heart this morning. What delight comes to the one who follows God's ways, who won't step in the way of the wicked, nor share the sinner's way, nor be found standing in the scorner's seat. His passion is to remain true to the word of I am, meditating day and night on the true revelation of light. He will be standing firm like a flourishing tree planted by God's design, deeply rooted by the brooks of bliss, bearing fruit in every season of life. He is never dry, never fainting, ever blessed, and ever prosperous. So, Father, I pray this upon this council this morning. These commissioners, Lord, that have been put in these positions by you, voted by the people to do the people's bidding. Lord, may you give them wisdom, may you give them peace, may you give them understanding. And Lord, knit their hearts together as a cohesive team for this community. We are truly blessed to be in Cleveland, Tennessee, because it is a faithful community. We thank you for planting us here today. And Father, we give you all the praise, honor, and glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Before I go to the report from the county mayor, I'd like to make an announcement on the constable position, 1st District, on the vacancy. And it sounds strange, the man was just elected, but we, after 120 days from the death of the previous constable, we're obligated to fill the position. And the one that was just elected does not take office until the 1st of September. And as you know, we received the notice on November the 28th, 2023, of a vacancy in the 1st District Constable seat. Per state law, it is the Commission's responsibility to fill the unexpired term. The County Commission office will receive resumes from citizens requesting consideration up until and including the meeting on March the 18th. Anyone submitting a resume will be asked to sign an affidavit confirming they meet the requirements to serve. The appointment of the 1st District Constable for the unexpired term will be on the March the 18th, 2024 voting session. Thank you. And now I'd like to go to the report from the county mayor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, everyone. A couple of things for you today. First of all, a few comments I'd like to share. More than any time in recent memory, topics like infrastructure, zoning, annexation, land use, and planning have become a part of our everyday conversations, as well as the deliberations here at the County Commission. Our community has experienced exponential growth over the last decade, and that growth trend is expected to continue. Remember, we were number one of all 95 counties in the state of Tennessee for announcing new jobs last year. Our roads are congested, our schools are nearing overcapacity. Our real estate industry estimates that we need approximately 600 more homes that were behind schedule for what is currently needed. Vital infrastructure like sewer, broadband, and even water is needed throughout parts of our county. I've said before, these are challenges that we've created for ourselves. We've worked diligently to create a place that people want to call home, where they want to live, work, and raise their families. And we've done a good job. We can't be surprised by the challenges that have arisen out of the successes of our county. We're growing, Cleveland, Charleston, and all of Bradley County. Now, I know that many in our community don't want more growth. We all miss the small town feel that we once shared. While that's a very real sentiment, growth is happening. Our local governments have an obligation to plan and prepare for the future and the growth that is inevitable. The plans, tools, and resources that we've used to plan for growth are now nearly 15 years old. For this reason, I'm calling on the cities of Cleveland and Charleston to sit down with us to engage in a new joint strategic plan for growth and planning. I also propose and invite our partners in the cities of Charleston and Cleveland as we reconvene the Growth Plan Coordinating Committee to review and amend the Bradley County, Cleveland, and Charleston 20-year growth plan. This process is twofold. The Joint Strategic Plan is a collaboration between all of our local governments under guidance from professional consultants along with input from the community and provides an in-depth comprehensive plan for future land use, also for infrastructure expansion and growth. And the Bradley County, Cleveland, and Charleston 20-year growth plan that was originally adopted in the year 2000 was last amended in 2010. This plan outlines the urban growth boundaries for the cities of Charleston and Cleveland. The process to amend the growth plan is outlined in state law and involves members of the Growth Plan Coordinating Committee and then final adoption of the amended plan by the Charleston City Commission, the Cleveland City Council, as well as this Bradley County Commission. There will no doubt be challenging decisions ahead, but I'm committed to working with each of you to make them. Now is the right time to do this. We have an opportunity to come together to work towards a common goal. What do we want our community to look like in 15 to 20 years? I look forward to working with the cities of Charleston and Cleveland and with each of you as we plan and tackle the challenges that we face together in a vibrant and growing community. Just some comments, but if anyone has any questions or comments you'd like to share, I'd welcome them at this time.
Commissioner Blake, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I applaud you on that. We've been kind of asking for that for some time, that growth plan that you referred to and those dates predate when the legislators changed forced annexation to applying for annexation. So I think that's one challenge right there. But my question, I guess, is what kind of time frame are you looking for to convene or hopefully get this done? Because as you see here today, we got some rezoning requests. Things are happening rather quickly.
Well, it will take a while. Hopefully the amending the existing plan won't be quite as bad. The last time it wasn't. The original growth plan took a while because it's a very complicated, there's several members of the coordinating committee that have to be put together. I will plan on moving with that fairly quickly, but then that committee is going to have to work for a period of time to work on the maps and come to an agreement of what to come back to the three governing bodies to approve. So it will take some time, but probably months. I don't know.
So on that same line, obviously I wasn't here when they did the first one or the amended one. Did they consult and use outside sources, quote unquote experts, during their meeting? And was there a budget?
Keep in mind the two different things there. You're sort of referring more to the
growth plan,
the joint strategic plan, and that will be something that you all move forward with more than anything because you will need a consultant to work with. When we did that originally, it was the city doing a strategic plan, and then we piggybacked on them and used the same consultant and made it countywide. I would hope that something like that would work out again. The growth plan itself, you really don't need. I don't ever want to say you don't need professional help, but if you put together the coordinating committee, it has members from different segments of our community, and it's just a matter of where you agree to move that line to. That one is required by law to have. We're not required to update it necessarily, but it's time to. But keep them separate. I don't want the original one, the one you're really referring to with the professional people, to hold up this strategic plan. I'll go ahead and ask the cities to send in their committee members. I will name my committee members and bring that all to you all, and that will begin that process. And then it'll be up to that committee how fast they move. The strategic plan itself, though, needs to be, that land use plan that's referred to a lot here is just one page in that strategic plan. And that strategic plan will need to be done with help from outside. And also appointing, I would hope that you, the city of Cleveland, and everyone involved would appoint members to a committee to actually study that also. It could happen at the same time, but they are different. The strategic plan, you have a map now, and you'll be looking at where to change the lines. And so that shouldn't be that complicated, although it could be very well controversial at times, but it shouldn't be that complicated to do.
Thank you, thank you.
I hope that sort of answered
Yeah, that does,
your
I mean,
question.
because, like I said, those plans, and the annexation, or not the annexation, the amendment to that was done for basically, exit 20 Spring Branch so that city could
Right.
incorporate that.
It was needed, and that was why it was requested at that time, yeah.
And so we're just looking to amend what's currently there from 2011.
Well,
Which I agree with.
part of my thing is to work with the city more on having some interlocal agreements possibly in place to address some of the annexation issues that have popped up recently. I think everyone will agree those aren't ideal.
I agree.
But if we can have some interlocal agreements in place and at the same time expand the growth boundary, because, you know, it is time, it's been a while now, that would give them some leeway where maybe we can have an agreement that we don't see more of those other things.
So, I mean, we come up with a new growth plan because we have one in place now, and I'm all for this as well, but it doesn't obligate them to stay within the growth plan, as we just found out. But
Well,
maybe during the conversations and the meetings,
that's where the
that can be
interlocal
articulated.
agreements would come in. You know, the law is conflicting. The law says you can only do this in this area, but then over here it talks about this new law that's jumped on the scene recently, which totally ignores the previous law. I don't write those laws, but a lot of times you'll run into conflicting laws that ought to be fixed. I don't expect it will be. So we update our plan. We have hopefully some interlocal agreements in place in the meantime, and that's our way of sort of fixing it without changing the laws.
Commissioner Thompson, please.
Mayor, I guess what they're doing now, we'll talk about this going to be a few months down the road before we get involved. And what's going to happen in those few months? Right now, they're already doing their own thing, so.
Well, and don't make it sound like that's why I'm doing this, but that would be one of the benefits of doing it. I'm proposing to do it because it's time to. It's been 14 years since it was updated. We're required to have it, and we ought to require ourselves to update it. So we need to get it updated, but one of the benefits might be that those things don't continue if we can get some agreements in place. And I think we can by expanding the growth boundary. But, you know, we're talking about months here. We're not talking about years or anything. So there's not any others happening today or tomorrow, so maybe there won't be until this can be done.
Anyone else? Commissioner Rogers? Oh, you didn't? Okay. Commissioner Winters.
So, Mr. Mayor, do you have a timeline at all you'd like to see the cities come together? Is there next 30 days, 60
I'll probably
days?
talk about that more next week, but I may have the announcement and my members for your confirmation next week. And a letter and information will be going to the other local governments. Now, they only have they don't have that many appointments, but you know what I'm saying? So I think everybody will be noticed, and then maybe next week I can answer that a little better. Today, it's more or less just a heads up that I think it's time to do this. I thought it was interesting, if you've been following Hamilton County, you know, in previous elections, I've often been accused of not planning as I should, but recently it was noticed in Hamilton County, they've never had a plan. We're looking at updating our plan, and Hamilton County doesn't even have a plan. They're looking at doing one, the first one. And because I guess the size of the city or whatever, I don't remember how the law was worded, but they weren't required to do the growth plan that we were back in 2000. That was actually a state requirement, and it was a good thing. It said cities and counties work together, come up with an agreed plan, and here's what you can do down the road. And how that other law slipped in there, I don't know. But probably next week, but in the very near future for sure.
Yeah, I've been very vocal about the city and county working together in the long-range planning. As city residents who I represent, much of the finances will be coming from city funding if there is such a movement together. So I'm glad we're talking together, and I think our community will benefit from that. Thank you.
Anyone else for the mayor before he carries on? Go ahead, Mayor.
Okay, one other thing, I was giving it time to get around to you. This issue has been on my plate now for a couple of years, and we're getting very close. I'm bringing you the revised plans. The last time we're talking about the fire garage. The last time I brought you plans, there was lots of comments made. I wrote all those comments down. I think I've addressed most everything that was made in that meeting. Then we went to the fire department itself and went over the plans with them and got their input on what we should do differently. So after all of that, this is the revised plan. Now, compared to that previous meeting, and I don't remember when that was, but it was several months ago, the building did get larger. That was one of your all's concerns. It's now a 80 by 120 foot building, garage. It will have the things that we want in it that we would be moving to this building, which is a conference room with the proper square footage. One of the things that the fire department asked was to go from 3 offices to 6. The city has agreed. That's in these plans, 6 offices. It's got 6 bays. They're drive-through bays, but they could be 6 different bays, 6 doors. It's got a large storage area on one end of the building, and of course, it had a restroom in it already, but now it has a restroom with a shower. That was requested. So it meets all of their requirements, and everything that we asked for. If you look at the second sheet, one of the things was to, because they're doing the grade work and all, is bringing the grade work down where they can actually drive out on the right side of the building, which would be back onto the road, as opposed to having to turn around and go back out. So not that that concerns you all that much probably, but that's been addressed in the new drawing. I'm comfortable, and I think that we'll be ready to move next week, but I know we'll be able to move with a resolution. What I'm requesting today is a resolution. Now, Crystal's on vacation this week, but when she gets back Monday morning, I'll get her to do a resolution for you to have. But I will be requesting a resolution that authorizes me to negotiate an agreement, the written part of the agreement. What you see is the plans. And if you would put on the agenda next week to authorize me to negotiate the agreement, then I would come back at a later date, probably in April, with that actual agreement. Ask for your approval at that time. Right now, it's just an FYI and authorizing me to negotiate.
Commissioner Thompson.
I'd like to make a motion that we're giving permission to negotiate on that.
But
And
It goes on the next.
It's going on
on
the
next meeting.
meeting.
next week,
Yeah.
yeah.
Put it on
But
next week.
just put it on the agenda is all you
Put
need
it
to
on the
do.
agenda for next
we're
week,
gonna-
yeah.
We'll be there.
I'll stop there. Is any questions? Because I've been working on this so long, I don't really remember what was big issues with you. But if there's any questions by any of you,
Commissioner Winters, please.
Mr. Mayor, one of the questions that came up at, I think, a meeting that I attended was about Menace Road and the access of vehicles of these statures of strength and size on a 2-lane road. Is that going to be any
Well,
road? Is that a problem or is it not?
we don't see it that way. The fire department doesn't. Keep in mind, this is not a fire station. There's already a fire station on Menace Road, so you've got the emergency fire trucks already doing what you're referring to. That's not to say that none of these vehicles would not ever leave in an emergency, but it's basically a garage where the ladder truck and these other vehicles that aren't used daily are, I don't want to say stored, but that's where they're housed. And so there could be a need and they're leaving emergency, but your normal fire runs, the engine and the tanker is in the building next door. And this is built from the existing building. If you're looking at that sheet, it would be going from the existing building over to the property line, which is where they're building apartments or houses or whatever, so getting ready to go there. And of course, it's a 3-lane road at this point anyway. But we think it would be the best location that we've looked at. That some time ago. The only negative, and I hate to point out negatives, but the only negative with this location is if they continue to do countywide training at one time, you need a football field, and we don't have. But they do have access to the park across the road that could be utilized. I would hope they would go to maybe a half a department training at a time, but I don't stick my nose into daily operations. If they continue to do county-wide training all at once, this conference room is the same size we have now, so it takes care of that. But there's not a place you can find that has that kind of parking for that many fire trucks. That's one thing that we're sort of giving up where we're at now. But that's the only negative we've come across, and I've told them, and they sort of understand that, if we go with this location, and if you continue countywide, you have access to the ballpark to park.
Commissioner Goins, please.
Cost, I mean, do they know what the cost is gonna be for like the excavation?
I've never
and
discussed
everything?
cost, but I'm glad you mentioned it because I didn't point out. I guess I assumed you knew what the city's agreeing to do once we have an agreement. And so we're talking hypothetical. It's pre-agreement, okay? But we're close. I mean, this drawing came from the city. What they're agreeing to do is to go over there, prepare the site, all the dirt work, prepare the site, do everything that needs to be done, build the building, all the way through painting, with the things that you see in this drawing, and it should be pretty much ready to move in when it's finished. That was a term that was used, I think, by Mr. Winters before, turnkey, right? We've got it to that point. Now, it's not like a house where it's literally, but it's pretty much everything would be done and built. So I don't know the cost. The cost is on them. They're saying, we'll build you this building with all of this and then swap. And so the agreement that I come back to you with after you authorize me to negotiate the agreement will be an agreement that spells all that out. Does that make sense? You follow me?
Commissioner Blake.
So you don't anticipate us having to budget anything to make this happen?
As of now, I do not know. I don't know of anything. I mean, the plumbing, the sewer, the electric, everything is included in this building. So that's been my goal from day one, is you get us what we need and we'll swap with you. And so you will be agreeing to the swap at some point.
Commissioner Hughes.
Mr. Chairman, I think this will be fun, honestly, but I would love for this to go to a fire committee for their support in this also. So as of March 18th at 11 o'clock, we'll set up a fire committee meeting.
11 o'clock, March the 18th.
Yes.
And I was totally expecting that, but that's why you're only authorizing me to negotiate. Go ahead and authorize me to negotiate while you're having your meetings, your committee meetings. Probably ought to be a joint building and fire, by the way, because it is a building situation. While you're having those meetings, I can be negotiating once you pass this resolution. And then after that, I'll come back to you with the final thing.
Was that it?
Yes, I think it'll be fine, though. It's gonna be at 11 o'clock before the voting happens, so.
Well, that's, yeah. If you could have both of them together and that
Do
way.
we wanna make a joint meeting? I'm fine with that.
Okay, done all right, joint building and lands, okay. On the 18th, 11 a.m. Commissioner Ledford, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Who owns this land, or does the
This
city
is on
own this
our
land?
property. It's on our property.
So we already own the land?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they don't have to purchase the land then, so that's gonna be part.
Right. We were trying to find a place to build it on property that we already own, because otherwise probably wouldn't have worked out. We looked at Dooley Street. A huge amount of dirt would have to be moved there, and really I didn't want to take the potential growth area away from the health department. Down the road, we'll probably need that property. We looked at Waterville. I'm trying to think, because this was done early on. We looked at the Waterville site before we put it up for sale. Everyone agreed that this was the best of the sites that we already owned without having to buy property, yes.
Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, I have one more question. The general consensus of your fire chief and your firemen, are they okay with this? I mean,
Yeah.
what's their
they-
input?
They are, and I mentioned that, but I'm sure some of you will go straight to them to verify what I just told you. After the last drawings that we got back from the city, I sat down with them and went over it, and they did have several changes, and every one of those changes the city has agreed to, so they're in this latest drawing. So I don't want to speak for them if you want to ask, but yeah, everybody should be okay. We made all the changes that were suggested,
Thank you, Mr.
and
Mayor.
I addressed everything except that parking thing that I talked about.
Commissioner Rogers, please.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, this land, we own this land, you said, correct? So
Yes.
this isn't in the city, correct? This isn't city land?
They've annexed all around it, but no.
Well, if they're building this building, they're not gonna try and annex that as well, are they?
It's one of the discussions and arguments we continue and will continue to have, yes.
Any other questions for the mayor? Go ahead, sir.
Mike, did you? He thought you were asking. No other questions? If not, again, next week, I'm just asking the authorization to negotiate, and we'll hopefully by your next voting meeting come back with something, but at least in the very near future, okay? Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to the reports from the committees and/or districts. We'll start on our left with Commissioner Rogers, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nothing to report today. Just want to congratulate the Bearettes on another state championship this weekend, 2 in a row, and the team looks like they could probably beat some WNBA teams right now. So I just want to say congratulations to Coach Jason Reuter and his staff and everyone over at Bradley Central High School. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We'll try to have them up later on when they get back down to earth here. Commissioner Ledford, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too want to congratulate the Bearettes. The next thing I do want to congratulate our winners of the election last Tuesday, Stephen Hatchett for District Attorney, Mr. Brantley for Constable, and Rachel Ivy Goins for School Board. And other than that, Mr. Chairman, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Mason, please.
Thank you, Chairman. 6th District's doing well. I'll echo the guys that won their election and the Bearettes also. And don't forget the Cleveland Raider ladies. They went pretty far in the basketball tournament also. That's all I have. Thank you, Chairman.
Commissioner Slater, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, owners of landlocked properties along Hewitt Street requested the county grant an easement to access their properties. The road committee learned last fall that a road was platted but was never built. After a survey and consultation with the assessor of property and the county attorney, we may now proceed with executing a non-exclusive perpetual access easement. So, Mr. Chairman, I place on the March 18th, 2024 voting session agenda a motion to authorize the mayor to execute a non-exclusive perpetual access easement across map and parcel .065 KH 022.00 for each currently landlocked property owner in Willow Hill subdivision.
Thank you. So it is. Okay. Anything else?
That's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
is that off of Dockery Lane?
By
Okay.
Truesdale School, yes. It's off Dockery Lane.
Commissioner Goins, please.
5th District's doing well, but congratulations to the Bradley Bearettes. That's all I have.
Commissioner Thompson.
Fourth is doing well.
Commissioner Gilbert.
Mr. Chairman, the Juvenile Committee will be meeting at 11 a.m. on April the 5th here in the commission room. I have nothing else.
Okay. Commissioner Winters, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I received a contact with one of my constituents this week asking me to encourage this commission as well as the state of Tennessee to continue supporting Israel. I understand her concerns. I want to remind the commission here that we have said on October 7th, 2023, we have sent a resolution to the state of Tennessee General Assembly to stand with Israel as it defends itself against the war launched by Hamas. For those in the public that would like to reference this, This was done October 7th, 2023, and sent to our state. We hate to see what's going on to the only democracy that's in the Middle East. Most of us in this room, our faith is built on God's work with Israel. So we have a bond with Israel that's very strong, and I think it will continue as long as the majority of us will continue to stand with them. This commission does that. One personal privilege for me, please, Mr. Chairman. My oldest sister passed 2 weeks ago. This past Saturday, my wife and I and my daughter drove to her funeral. And had great reflection on my big sister. My big sister had a speech impediment all of her life. Her son shared in the funeral how embarrassing it was for her. She helped me learn how to talk. She was not an athlete, but she'd throw a ball to me and beg that I wouldn't throw it to her because she would hit her in the face. So I didn't throw it to her, I threw it to my younger sister. But for many of us in this room, we've had big sisters. And with the fine mother that I had, I'm probably where I am today because of those two ladies, as well as several other ladies, my other sister and my wife. But her name was Rose Sharon. I never understood why my dad named her Rose Sharon till I looked up in the Bible where Rose Sharon is. And in Song of Solomon, when God is trying to show everybody how much he loves us, cares for us, he called himself and his son the Rose of Sharon. The Rose of Sharon. So my dad nailed it down. When his firstborn was born, he named her Rose Sharon. So as close as she could get to Jesus was my sister's name. So I reflected on that. And as I came to this meeting today on the radio I can only imagine. I can only imagine what's in heaven. And today I'm only imagining that. Thank you for the personal privilege, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Gilbert, please.
I'd like to echo the words of Mr. Winters about Israel and condolence to his sister. It is very important that we do remember Israel. And thank you, Bill.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Collins, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Condolences, Commissioner Winters, on the loss. Also, send out our thoughts to Commissioner Alford, who's at home recovering, from his time. So I think he's doing well. I appreciate the opportunity today to share with the Commission a resolution for consideration that highlights the concerns present in legislation currently moving through the General Assembly specific to the passage of universal school vouchers. It's important to note that the tree of school vouchers has many branches, but the root of the concern for this body, the funding body of Bradley County, is not specific to education, but specific to funding and budgets. While promises have been made that state education budgets will not be robbed to pay for vouchers, rest assured that money must come from somewhere. Infrastructure, public safety, roads, and all the like will suffer at the hands of private school vouchers. Current proposed legislation includes the possibility of uncapped universal vouchers, which provide public money for private school education. As we evaluate the state budgets that have experienced the political pressures of lobbyists and influential promises, we must look at the following examples. Florida's budget for vouchers, which allow for any family, regardless of income, to access $8,000 per child, has swollen from $300 million at the birth of school vouchers to an estimated $4.2 billion. Indiana has now moved its voucher budget to over $500 million, with 99% of the allocated money going to private school endowments. Arizona, a state that has experienced Republican leadership over the last 3 terms of governors, has had such a disastrous state budget as a result of yearly increases in universal vouchers that the state has now elected a Democrat governor to fix its now $300 million budget deficit. I'm thankful that these examples exist for our lawmakers to evaluate, to see the economic pitfalls of universal vouchers for state budgets, which will indeed trickle down to local budgets. Our current state budget allows for limited school vouchers in Hamilton, Shelby, and Davidson counties. These funds are available for the most at-risk students in the most failing schools. There is currently no evidence that exists to demonstrate any measure of success for vouchers in these counties. We have a responsibility to our taxpayers to voice our concerns about the financial impact this unregulated private school prop-up will have on not only our state, but our county's financial future. I encourage this commission to endorse this resolution and stand up for our taxpayers and our public schools. Mr. Chairman, I move to place this resolution on next week's voting agenda.
Done.
That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I have a few questions about this resolution. One, we're placing it on a voting session without having any discussion on it. I would like to see this be brought into a work session to where we can discuss and hopefully maybe even have our state reps or state senator here to be able to speak and discuss on this resolution. The state hasn't even came up with a bill yet. There's a bill from the governor, there's a bill from the Senate, and there's also a bill from the House where they're still trying to figure out what actually is completely in the Freedom Scholarship Act. And so I don't even believe currently our county school board has even passed a resolution supporting this or not supporting it. So I'd like to hear what our school board members and what our schools think about this. And so I just think there is a lot of questions, a lot of conversation that needs to have before we as a county just go and just say we're completely, totally.
Any, Commissioner Blake?
Oh, sure.
Go ahead.
And just a response to that, this is not an educational conversation. This is a financial conversation. I think we're the funding body for our community. I think it's pretty clear and evident that universal vouchers have a huge financial pitfall in the states that have utilized them. So I think it's important for us to look at it financially, not educationally. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? It'll be on the agenda for next week. Commissioner Blake.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate Mr. Collins focusing on the funding piece of it, the education piece of it, the curriculum that they do, all the way to dress, all that kind of stuff. Yes, the school board needs to handle that and address that. But the funding piece of it is our responsibility. And as you well know, we fund not only the county school, but we fund the city schools as well. So it's pretty much both of our school systems. But what concerns me is I read it, and I understand the bill is evolving, but there's certain pieces of it that are that we can count on, and that is taxpayers' dollars are coming outside of a public arena into more of a private sector. I'm all for private schools and how they. I went to a private school for a few years when I was in elementary school, but I have here the audit that we go through every year. The mayor, all departments, even the schools are accountable because the taxpayers, when they pay their property tax or they buy goods and services on the economy, pay sales tax, and they are owed accountability. They ask questions. They deserve rightful and truthful answers. The audit is one piece of that. Public meetings are also a piece of that. The other audit is the internal audit that the school does as well through a private CPA firm. I don't think that the private institutions, with all due respect, will ever agree to these kind of things. And that's where my concern is. You take public dollars where there's an accountability piece, and that's not there. So, and I only look at it from a financial point of view, like I said. The next thing is, I think the examples that we're giving are well documented, but when I was in college, I received a Pell Grant, and that was basically from the federal government, and all it did was federal dollars going into schools, and it just raised the cost of it, those schools. And then the last thing, we have a maintenance of effort responsibility, I believe around in the mid-30s, something like that, Mayor. It's going to be coming up in our budget, that we fund our education systems at a certain amount or more every year. And with all these things going on, I think that they have to address the maintenance effort. So I think this resolution is timely, and I think it sends the right signal to our legislative body that pay attention to the funding piece. The education stuff, I get, we'll deal with that over there. The school boards throughout the state and the state school board can deal with that piece of it. But the funding piece is a critical piece that we will have to deal with. Thank you.
Commissioner Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my issue with this resolution is that it talks about seeking to divert public dollars away from public schools. And I understand, and I'm all for the funding, the issues bringing up funding. But the problem is we don't even know where the funding's coming from yet because there isn't even a bill that has been presented yet. So we don't know if the money from the state is going to be coming out of the public school coffers. Is it going to be coming out of the rainy day fund? Is it going to be coming from any other place? So I understand what you're talking about when you say that the funding, the state has this money and it's public money that's going to private schools. I get where people are upset with that. But those private school kids who go to private school, their parents are also paying state taxes as well. And so I understand where they are trying to put in a place for school choice. I understand what the governor's wanting to do. A lot of other states have done it. A lot of Republican states have done it. But I just think that we're opposing something where we're talking about financially. We're opposing something that we don't even know where it's really financially coming from. We just know that the money's coming from the state, and we don't want that. We just don't want this to happen. And so until the bills are passed and they're put out in action, I mean, how can we vote and oppose something we haven't even read yet? We don't even know about.
But we have a pretty good idea because they've been on tour throughout Memphis to Johnson City, and if it comes from the rainy day fund, and one of the bills I saw, it's in their general fund. We're not allowed to put education dollars in our general fund, 101, to fund anything. Their fund is 141. So whether it comes from a rainy day fund or if it comes from a gasoline tax or anything, it's public money that was levied by the sovereign government of the state of Tennessee and the sovereign county of Bradley and the city of Cleveland. So it's public money. They're going to nash that out, but it's not a donation. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Commissioner Collins.
I appreciate Commissioner Rogers highlighting the fact that we've had multiple bills presented and yet a lot of secrecy and unknowns about the budget. So I appreciate you pointing that out because typically we would present a bill and the public would know where the money's coming from. It's ironic that we've yet to identify where that money is coming from. So thank you for pointing that out.
Is that all you had, sir? Commissioner Blake.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also, Commissioner Winters, my condolences to you and your family during this time. Let's see, what do I have here? Really easy ones. Just to let everybody know, this Thursday, all the elected officials and the department heads will submit their budget request to the mayor's office. He'll compile those and get it to us. So we're making progress on the budget for the 24-25 budget. And last but not least, one other wish there, but this week, Bradley, Cleveland, Lee, and I'm not sure about Cleveland State, but I know those three, Bradley, Cleveland, and Lee, are on spring break. So I want everybody to have a nice week, safe. Everybody who goes to the beach, everybody comes back, right? So that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to temporarily turn the chairmanship over to the vice chairman, and I'd like to speak as the commissioner from the 2nd District, and then I'll resume my duties after I can get through running my mouth here for a minute. As we all know, we have a wonderful new 108-bed Tennessee State Veterans Home in Bradley County. Many of us attended the June 22nd, 2023 ribbon cutting and grand opening. About a month plus following the grand opening, there were only 4 residents at the home. I contacted State Representative Kevin Raper and State Senator Adam Lowe last fall and was told the occupancy would be 20 of 108 rooms by December. We must remember that there is a waiting list of over 400 veterans awaiting admission. This information on the number was provided by the administrator to me last week. We must also remember that some of these veterans are potentially homeless and in poor medical condition. I visited the home last week, and the administrator confirmed that there were only 21 residents of the 108. Administrator told me they were awaiting required inspections and permits, mostly federal level and possibly state. I believe the issue of government bureaucracy, along with our elected officials and some appointees going to sleep at the wheel and failing to remember part of their responsibilities, is to represent their constituents and the needs of the veterans. I place on the March 18th, 2024 voting session agenda a motion to send a letter to our local, state, and federal elected officials, along with their state and federal Veterans Administration, requesting assistance in clearing the bureaucracy and filling our veterans' home with deserving veterans. Thank you. Any questions? I'll now reassume my role.
And that will be done. That's what I get to do.
Thank you. All right. Now we'll go to Commissioner Hughes, please.
Oops. Mr. Chairman, I have 3 rezoning recommendations from Planning Commission to present today. You have heard copies of the resolutions and maps of all 3. The first resolution to rezone from Forestry Agricultural Residential District to Specialized Commercial District property located around, at or around 7896 Dalton Pike Southeast, identified by tax map 097 parcel 039.00. The purpose use is a Dollar General store. The Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval. I place this resolution on the March 18th, 2024 voting session agenda. The second is a resolution to rezone from Forestry Agricultural Residential District to Specialized Commercial District property located at or around the 5800 block of Georgetown Road Northwest, identified by tax map 026 parcel 007.00. The purpose use of this is possibly a boat, RV, and storage open air, enclosed, or both. Storage units, basically. The Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval. I place this resolution on the March 18th, 2024 voting session agenda. And I'm just going to go through this last one, and then if you have any questions, I'll back up to that. The final is a resolution to rezone from Rural Residential District to General Commercial District, the property located at or around 2970 Dalton Pike Southeast, identified by tax map 066P, Group F, parcel 003.00. The Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval. The purpose use is a garage or for personal storage. I place this resolution on the March 18th, 2024 voting session agenda. If there's any questions.
Anyone have any questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Please.
Commissioner Hughes, was the growth plan or the land use plan used to make these decisions from the Planning Commission?
I think I need to add that to them for now. Yes, all 3 were checked for the land use and the growth plan. They all fit and were approved through that.
Even though the 2970 Dalton Pike appears to be in the middle of a residential area?
2970 Dalton Pike is right there on Dalton Pike, and if you look at the land use, you'll see that the edges of Dalton Pike itself is approved for commercial.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Yes.
On the Georgetown Road,
Yes.
we're talking out toward where there's a former mall over there to the right. Is this where this is?
This is actually just above another storage unit, or land. It's a storage unit, probably less than a quarter of a mile above. It's just open. He's wanting it open air actually for RVs, and said it'll possibly be 10 years plus before he even does this.
So are we at a point where we're going to have enough is enough of storage units on the highways? This is a brand new highway, 60 highway, and we have already about 3 there. So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman, just where that is.
Thank you. You have anything else, sir?
Other than to give Commissioner Winters my condolences. Nothing else.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If you don't mind, point of order, Senator Lowe has just joined us and said he might have an update for us on the veteran home question. If you don't mind recognizing him for just a moment, or as much time as he may need. But I will add one thing to your comments, if you don't mind. One of the downstream effects to what's going on with the veterans home over there is, as you, Commissioner Winters knows, Commissioner Rogers, now Commissioner Gilbert, on the nursing home over on Peerless Road, a lot of the, let me get these titles right, RNs, CNAs, and all that, you can't blame them, decided to change employment and went over there. Well, because of what you stated, that the occupancy isn't where it is, they're not getting the hours, and that kind of stuff is going on. And some of them we've been able to bring back over to the nursing home, but not all. So that's kind of the downstream of effect, if you will, of not being organized and having everything ready to go, understand all the ramifications, dotting the I and crossing the T's on something like this. I appreciate you bringing that up.
I know we'll recognize Senator Lowe here in just a second. It goes back to my point on bureaucracy, unnecessary bureaucracy, and people going to sleep at the wheel on their responsibilities on doing their job. It's basically what it amounts to. Somebody needs to get kicked in the rear end and get this thing moving. Senator Lowe, please, if you'd like to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Condolences, Vice Chairman Winters. I'd like to offer mine as well. Chairman Gry is probably spot on in his assessment right now, so I welcome this letter as we continue to kind of battle for getting those beds filled. I think you noted, Chairman, that last fall we pushed and we went from 8 to 20. And I know there's oftentimes the pointing the fingers at the federal government, and that's something that they have to work with, but it's drug on a little bit too long. So I think the local delegation, and I haven't spoken directly with Kevin Raper on this, but I would say he probably echoes my sentiments that we're not happy with the situation either. So it's a great resolution. I look forward to you sending it to me as we continue to do some kicking.
We would appreciate all the help we can get. There are 4 veterans on the commission here, and I doubt any of us will ever probably reside there. But when you've got 400 people on the waiting list, some probably are homeless or near homeless, and medically they've got serious issues, and we're sitting over there with all those beds empty. You've got a problem, not you personally, but we have a problem, and that's where I'm coming from. Thank you very much. You have anything else, sir?
Well, I know that you have a resolution before you on the Opportunity Scholarship piece. What I'll tell you is there are 2 very different bills moving through the Senate and the House. There's a lot not to like about both of them. I would encourage you to make sure that you are factual with what you dislike rather than rhetoric. There's been talks of secrecy. I've had 2 local meetings, one with the school board, one was an open town hall. Several of you attended that. I don't think there's been any secrecy on the state level. With regards to that, there has been some uncertainty with regards to how things will move. Currently, neither plan utilizes existing TISA funds for private school transfer. And there's been a lot of speculation around why. Why would we even consider school choice? Why would we consider opportunity scholarships in the state of Tennessee? And what I'll say is look beyond kind of the superficial analysis of stuff. I'm arguably a benefactor of school choice as a kid that grew up in situational poverty. My parents, I literally lived the first 3 years of my elementary school career in a house with half a roof. So my parents could get me into a school zone and get me into a better school when I was a kid. And it's sad that we had to live in those conditions, but it mattered enough to my folks. And it wasn't my test scores that mattered. That is one point of evaluation. What mattered was the satisfaction my parents had, the relationship they felt they had with the school, the condition whereby I was being raised, and the relationships I was developing, and what it was doing for me as a person. And oftentimes when we talk about school choice, we have to remember that giving parents a choice, that the chief measurement in that decision isn't a test score, it isn't academic achievement. Parents don't necessarily move for academic achievement. They move for fit. They move to be in a place where they think their child can grow and prosper. And I use this example quite often because here in District 1, we have had the most effective and efficient form of school choice, which is open enrollment. And it works very, very well for our district. And I constantly point to our district when I go back to Nashville and say, this is how things should be done. And this is what open enrollment does. It allows me to put my child in a place where they can prosper in all aspects of their being, not just in their test scores, because I think all of us would rather our children be well, mentally stable, good people, as opposed to people who are under emotional torment but have the best test scores in the school. We would take that trade all day long. So if you have any specific questions, I'll be glad to answer them. Again, two very different bills moving. The House has a very pork-loaded bill with a lot of different things to it. The Senate's is a bit more streamlined. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll take any questions while I'm here.
All right, open. Anyone? Commissioner Blake, please.
Thanks, Senator Lowe, for being there. I appreciate your words there. What we were focused on today was just the physical financial piece of it. The academics we just talked about before you got here is over for your school board. I do appreciate the town hall, but correct me if I'm wrong in my way of thinking that when I pay my property tax or I buy something on the economy, that's my sales tax. That's the main source for the state, I believe. Whether I have a child in the school or not, I can ask the school board to be put on the agenda, and I can say whatever I need to say, obviously with professional and all that kind of stuff. I'm not hearing that accountability. When I said to them, we get audited by the comptroller for how we spend taxpayers' money, the accountability piece on that, and we have people come up here and ask us questions and express their concerns. I don't see that being part of any discussion up there. Well, it probably is, but I don't know that there's some who are for it. We've heard some of the private institutions say they don't want any part of that. If there's going to be an accountability piece, leave us out. And I don't see how you can use taxpayers' dollars that we levy because we're a sovereign government and not have the accountability piece. So that's and I'm only speaking to the money piece of it. Maintenance effort, you guys can work out the details.
Most of the accountability discussed to date has been assessment accountability, whether that is those who voluntarily accept the Opportunity Scholarship, either presenting an equivalent test that's nationally normed or taking TCAP. As far as financial accountability, we do public-private partnerships all the time. You have private road builders building your roads right now that the state contracts with. There are plenty of places in government where the point of accountability is the expense government issues. And like I said, we see it with road builders. We see it with other aspects of government where we partner with private entities, for-profit entities to do certain services. That's essentially what's being proposed here. You have a governor who is proposed, we want to partner with private schools for the benefit of those families who feel that route best serves them. Now, some of the rhetoric around accountability has been, well, we're creating another entitlement. Well, public education is the entitlement. I mean, we're just expanding some free market well, I say we, I'm speaking on behalf of the legislature. The attempt behind the Opportunity Scholarship is to expand some free market principles and choice within the context of that entitlement. But public education is our largest entitlement at the state level, right? It's the thing, not only does the state fund in mass, but you guys even have requirements. You mentioned maintenance of effort, where you're required to fund. So most of it's been to testing accountability, but I would encourage you to look at that from a public-private partnership perspective. Boy, that's an alliteration right there, public-private partnership perspective.
If I could chime in on that,
Yeah.
though, in your example, building a bridge and you contract out with XYZ company, you have that contract and that language in there, and that's kind of your quasi-accountability piece of it. I mean, they're going to have to negotiate. The mayor does that for us and stuff like that. You mentioned contract in that scenario, but then partnership in this. They're totally different things. I mean, are we going, is the state of Tennessee or Bradley County going to enter into contracts with private schools?
I would venture to say if you're going to take the opportunity scholarship, you're going to have some sort of written agreement based on accountability. Both plans currently have that in there. Now, you indicated we may have a very real problem, and that's a market problem, which is, do we print a currency in an opportunity scholarship that a private school won't cash? There's no obligation under either plan for private schools to participate. So it's really up to them whether or not they enter into an agreement. And you're right, there's a difference between partnership and contracting. I'm using those phrases synonymously just because we're having a conversation. But yeah, there would be some agreement that the private schools have to sign on to, but currently the discussions of those agreements are very much around the structure of how they assess students in that program in both chambers.
Only question I have, I appreciate you using the term rhetoric, because I think the governor has chosen some rhetoric that's pretty interesting when he talks about choice. Is it the parent's choice or is it the private school's choice? Because my understanding is the private school can choose not to accept the child. So whose choice is it, the schools or the parents? Thank you.
Well, the only choice we're expanding is parent choice. Private schools can already choose whether or not they take children. It's not a matter of their admission standards. It's a matter of whether or not the parents who choose to engage in those admission standards receive some sort of support. And it's finally nice to have a conversation with you about this issue, Mr. Kyle, because I've wanted one for a while for us to hammer some of this out. I think there are a lot of misnomers when it comes to what it means that this program will be doing. We often talk about things we don't like that already exist. We already don't like that private schools are exclusive. We already don't like their admission standards. But those are present. Those are already in place. They're already doing that. Whether or not the state allows a private school to continue to pick and choose based on their admission standards is not where the state's currently engaging. And again, there's a lot to criticize, and that's probably a fair one. It's a point of contention. But the governor and some of the proponents of the voucher legislation or opportunity scholarship legislation have pushed that to empower a parent to choose would empower the parent to undergo the scrutiny of those admission standards. I wouldn't take my child to a school that they wouldn't want my child. And we have some local private schools that have already said they don't want these kids, and they're not going to take, hence the market problem that we may have. We very well may have a currency that those schools may not cash. But again, those standards are already in place, and those are already exclusive institutions.
Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Gilbert.
So what you're saying is the number one thing, the private schools don't want the state's money.
I think the number one thing is most private schools don't want the state's accountability.
They don't
And I
want
would
the
say that
state
for
telling them what to
homeschool
do.
network too. And that very well may be an impasse. You know, are we trying, again, are we creating a program no one can use? That's a fair question. Depends on which program moves. It's been my number one question, right? If we're going to make a bold statement with $140-something million to create choice for parents in Tennessee, I want my parents to have more choice. I will say that the Senate version of this bill effectively institutes statewide open enrollment, which I've already praised in this meeting. I've already praised Bradley County schools for having. That's the keystone of that Senate version. It allows someone who maybe lives in an area that they can't afford the transportation to take their kid to the right public school or the extra tuition to go across boundaries into that public school. It allows them to tap that opportunity scholarship to go from public to public. That's in the Senate's version right now. If you ask me, that is a great opportunity for local families because we know, even with the development of the Pie Center, we have people who are wanting to take advantage and come to Bradley County schools, but if they don't pay property taxes to this county commission in Bradley County, they have to subsidize with a tuition.
You're saying they can tap into that money?
Currently in the Senate's proposal, yes.
Thank you, Senator.
Anyone else? Mr. Hughes?
Senator Lowe, I have one question. The biggest question to me is it's honestly one of the things that I agree with Commissioner Rogers about. We don't really know what the resolution or the bill's going to be yet. And do we have any idea of timeline of when we may know what the exact wording of that is?
Many of us have been very frustrated with the pacing of how this has developed. I had hoped that you guys had had a concrete plan and language, and our school boards had had that much sooner in this session than there is now. It's the nature of our system, right? The House and the Senate are moving with two different versions of the bill. What will happen is once they pass their versions, both bills will come across the chamber into the other chamber, and we will have an opportunity first and foremost to conform and substitute to the other chamber. So the Senate could say, well, we like the House's version, we'll take the House's version, we're done. House's version moves forward into law. Vice versa, the House could say, we like the Senate's version. More often when there's an impasse and two bills like that, it goes to some sense of a conference committee. And that conference committee will sit down and hammer out and broker what's important to each chamber to come back to the chamber for approval. What we do know in both versions is you have an external pot of funds, not currently under the mothership of public education. External pot of funds coming from the general fund right now because we have surpluses to use that could be used to subsidize some sense of scholarship. Now, the House version has a lot of other perks in it, not even related to the scholarship version. It's really an omnibus bill that provides for some capital outlay maintenance to public schools. It provides some other stability to retirement. I really encourage you to dig into that one because it is a bag of goodies right at the moment. And because of that, it's getting upwards of $400 million. So back to my former colleague from the fourth statement, take care of our money. I think the Senate's trying to take care of our money as we get into that realm. So that's the process. I don't particularly think it's been fair to our school boards or to you as the governing body for it to be so ambiguous on what's moving forward. So I'll say we'll have to watch in real time. My school board chairman, my directors, when new versions have gotten dropped, when the amendments from each chamber came out, I forwarded them immediately for consideration because they asked for that. I've tried to be out here in public forum anytime there's been a substantive change in the move of the vouchers. And so we will ultimately see that conference committee will dictate the final form that eventually we vote on if they can come to some consensus. If they don't come to consensus, we've not passed anything. It's still kind of hanging in purgatory, and we'll have to take it up again next session.
If I understand this correctly, the two bills that's out there may be totally different once they possibly go to where you can vote on them. And there's really no timeline on this.
Correct. I will end up voting on, assuming it passes, and it's passed out of Education Committee, it'll come to the floor. I will vote only on the Senate's version. The only opportunity I will have to vote on the House version is when it comes over to substitute and conform, or it comes out of conference and there's some hybrid between the two bills.
I would be remiss if I didn't put my 2 cents worth in here, Adam. Let's take two people, you and the pastor sitting there beside of you, stand side by side. My concern is that we have the same restrictions on both of you, not one of you. And as I understand it, there's no accountability compared to what the public system has that when we turn this money loose. And I'm not in for a debate on it. I just suggest to you that we treat each person fairly, okay? If you're going to require this over here, require it over here. And I think it's only fair. That's all I have to say. I just wanted to inject. Anybody else? Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate what you guys do and everything you've done to communicate with me and make me a better statesman in Nashville. Thank y'all.
All right, is that all, Commissioner Hughes?
It is.
All right, we'll now move on to the agenda items. Agenda item A, Commissioner Tommy Ledford, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had discussion on this last week. Dan come up and discussed it. So if anybody has any questions, I mean, I think everyone has the resolution before them, or they did have last week. And he's here to answer any questions if you have anything you need to talk about.
Anybody have any questions on A? A is on the agenda, voting agenda.
I have, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Just for clarification, this House Bill 726 and Senate Bill 1092, this is a federal bill, is that correct? Those are federal, or are those state bills by? So Edward Markey, I guess, because this one comes from Congress 118th, Tennessee, is that correct?
No. Yeah, it has changed. Lori, we didn't give everybody the changed resolution. It's a different resolution. I got it. I picked it up from Crystal. Yeah, that's not even the bill anymore. It's a different one. We've not handed out copies to everybody on this changed one. Okay. Yeah, those bills are not even there anymore. It's these.
Okay.
All right. Is that all, Commissioner Rogers?
It is. I just wanted to try and get some clarification. It had
No
two
problem
different
at all.
things there.
Anyone else? We'll go now to communication from the audience. I'll recognize and allow 5 minutes to anyone that wishes to speak. Anyone, please come.
Deborah Gleason in District 4. Just in speaking on this school of choice thing, I'm not a proponent of government schools, state schools. So since my children were in school, I fought the public schools when they took away the sovereignty of those public schools and put it under state control. That's why I'm against public schools. I think there should be sovereignty. Thus, I take issue with the comment that the private schools and the homeschoolers do not want to be part of being accountable to the state. That's not their issue. Their issue is that they don't want to be state controlled. So I just want to put that out there, that that's why they will not probably participate in being accountable. Not because they can't be. I think that they put out a student in our society that is heads above many of them that come out of the school system. There are people that there are students that come out of the school system that are probably tops in the system because they're just academics. You know, they're smart. But across the board in these private schools and the homeschoolers, I see it across the board. These students are way above of what we're seeing coming out of the public school. And I don't have any statistics with me, but I would be glad to gather those statistics to show you that there is a good reason for the fact that we have the private schools and the homeschoolers. They do play an important part of creating future students that are going to be of way above in academics that we're going to want to glean from and put in positions in our community. So I just am saying, I take issue with you saying that they don't want to be accountable. That's not the reasoning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak?
Good day, folks. Couple things, and I just want to add something real quick. On this whole school bill, what I think the question that everyone should ask, proponents, opponents, is once the institution accepts the funding from the state, does that at that point require them to use the curriculum of the state? I think you need to research that because you'll find it very interesting. On this resolution for this bill that Tommy put forward, I just want to read you a couple of things and so maybe give you a little like precedent here and why precedent has already been set for these sort of things at this level. James Madison, the fourth president of the United States as a new nation, considered the leading authority and an expert of the Constitution. We can safely rely on the disposition of state legislators to erect barriers against the encroachment of national authority. In other words, what Madison is talking about is federal government overreach in situations like we see constantly all the time. It costs the counties money, it costs the taxpayers, and it costs the state. So these encroachments happen. So the prevention of these encroachments starts at the local level and works their way forward, through resolutions to your state legislators. And a point to emphasize here, once again, is the original intent of the founders to maintain the federal sphere, the control of the federal government, as small and impotent as possible. Justice Scalia emphasized this point. This is a little bit later. Of course, Judge Scalia was a Supreme Court justice. This separation of two spheres is one of the Constitution's structural protections of liberty. A healthy balance of power between the states and the federal government will reduce the risk of tyranny and abuse from either front. Madison's wisdom is thus employed once again. Hence, a double security arises to the rights of the people. In other words, when the states stand in the way of federal overreach, that protects the people, and then the federal government has certain authorities to prevent that overreach of the state government. But that only functions correctly when it's applicable on both sides. And so the states are going to have to stand up, and say, this overreach that you're attempting is unconstitutional. Any unconstitutional law is not a law at all. It is tyranny. So we cannot allow these things to happen, and it is the responsibility of the state to do that. And these state institutions and situations and initiatives start at the county level. So the beginning of constitutional government is at the county level. And that's what the taxpayers and their expectation of their government should be. Once again, you'll hear people talk about the supremacy clause, that the federal government has supremacy over everything. That is a bountiful lie. That is not true. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And only laws and treaties made pursuant, keyword pursuant, to the Constitution fall within the scope of the supremacy clause. So only constitutional laws are applicable under the supremacy clause. Anything outside of that scope, the supremacy clause is also a federal intrusion into states' rights and the rights of the citizens at every level. So don't allow anyone to ever tell you that the supremacy clause gives them absolutism. That's a lie. And you can refer back to the made pursuant. In other words, that is only applicable where it is constitutional for the federal government to do those things. So this is why, we request that these sort of resolutions be put forward to the state level so they understand that the people at the local level want them to look at these things from a constitutional perspective. And so that's why I'm asking for this resolution to be passed. And I think that the people, you're doing the people's work when you do that. Thank you.
Thank you. It'll be voted on next week. Anyone else from the audience that would like to speak? Yes, sir.
My name's David Hanna.
kinda new at this. One of the zoning requests on Dalton Pike property that my brother and I have entered into an agreement with Dollar General. Mr. Berry with Berry Engineering had to leave to a previous engagement. My brother and I didn't take this lightly. We just thought it would be beneficial for all parties, county, community, and ourselves. And I'd like to ask for consideration. If anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to attempt to.
I guess, just what part, is it down in Flint Springs area on Dalton?
It's past Flint Springs, sir. It's more, my brother and I have a dairy farm down there, and we've run that dairy since 1981, and my father and his brother ran it from
You're the-
46 on.
Oh,
And
you-
it's a quarter of a mile, this property's probably close to a half a mile south of what we call 317 Weatherly Switch.
Yeah. I'm familiar with where your mother lived and where you live up on
It's,
the right
it's on
there.
south past that. It's on the south end of our farm.
Okay, I just didn't know exactly the 7,000 block.
Right. And like I say, they've given it a tentative address, I think it was, of approximately 78.
Anyone have any questions for the gentleman? Appreciate you coming up, Mr. Hannah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next week, now I'm gonna open it up for public hearing next week when we vote on it. All right? Yeah, that'd be the time to be there too. Either one. Yeah, okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Ledford.
Mr. Hannah, before you go, I just want to say thank you for coming today. Me and Tim, of course, you're in our district. And I've actually, I think you remember, I've been to your dairy farm. If you want to see something unique, you need to go to this dairy farm. This is not some big Mayfield's automated dairy farm. These boys do all this stuff by hand. They take those mechanisms, devices, whatever that goes on these cows, and it's hard work. I don't know. I don't want to be a farmer after watching these guys. I sit there and watch them milk, and it's and you don't want to get in those cows' ways either when they're coming in because they're ready to eat. But I appreciate you, Mr. Hannah, and anything I can do for you, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, anyone else like to speak? Going once, twice, 3 times. We'll now go to announcements. Next meeting, voting session Monday, March the 18th at 12 p.m. Tree Day event, March the 16th at 11 a.m. noon, Greenway Pavilion. 11 a.m., there'll be a joint meeting of the Fire and 11 a.m. on the 18th, the Fire and Land Committee. And 11 a.m. on April the 5th, the Juvenile Committee will meet with